I think I was impatient because I wasn't appreciating the moment as it was, right? I was trying to move on to the next one. I was so hungry for the next thing. And I think in such a fast society that we live in right now, I think it is a common thing that people do experience, and I have been told that quite a few times as well. Because we live in such a fast society and community that we want things now, people are struggling to really appreciate, embrace the actual moment itself.
Hey everyone, welcome to episode 7 of the Chillcast. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Really excited for today's episode. Just before I do begin, again, thank you all so much for the support. If you haven't already liked and subscribed to the channel, really easy to do. And I never introduce myself, I always forget. So my name is Kavien, so obviously the host, and we've got Shanaka again, who's always been joining, so really excited for this one. And we've got a special guest here, Angela, who is very, very excited, and we've got a lot of things to talk about and share. So really excited. I think there'll be a lot of deep conversations as well as like just informative ones and practical ones to our lives. And I think, I'm just really excited. So I want to sort of dive into it. How are you going?
I'm good, and thanks for having me on today, Kavien.
Oh, good.
I think there's a lot that I actually want to talk about today, but happy to just go with the flow, to be honest, and just
100%.
talk how we normally talk.
Easy.
I feel like Angela's got so many things to go into. So usually when I call Angela, I have to like put aside 2 hours. So it just blows for 2 hours before I know it. Yeah. So there's so much to go into.
It's a good issue to have. I'm the opposite. I can't talk enough.
Don't worry, they will do the job for you.
Easy.
So basically, I guess what I really wanted to talk to you about today is, I guess, my spirituality in a way. I've only been meditating it's been less than a year now actually, only less than a year, but I feel like it's been so life-changing for me personally. And I honestly know that it might not suit everyone, and I think it's just a tool set that I use, and I really don't think one size fits all. But just come from my own experience. I just want to share that today and see if anyone resonates, and just bounce off ideas off each other with that.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I don't think obviously you're going to do it through your sort of way, right? But I think it's relatable to everyone in different ways. So I think the concepts and ideas are still pretty relatable. So I think it will be good in that way.
I think it is really interesting though, because I think when it comes to spirituality or even meditation, people have so many different things they want to get out of it, and everyone's interpretation or perspective of what meditation is so different, right? Like you might talk to someone on the street and they might say, oh, I'm not into it because they probably just don't know enough, or the perceived notion of meditation is that just sitting there in silence. And I can resonate with that because when I started years ago, I actually had no idea what it was, and I really thought it was not for me. Like sitting there for 5 minutes was enough. It was enough. I was like, why do people do this? So then I actually didn't continue at all. I didn't actually pursue it at all until I actually understood what it was. And even from then, I think what people want to get out of it is so different. And I know for me personally, it's changed a lot, and it's evolved since I've started so far. In the short 10 months that I've had. But honestly, because I have only just started, I'm not going to give any advice that I think will apply to every single person. I'll only speak from my own experience.
Yeah, it's the best way to speak.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like I've been able to see not the whole thing, but I've been a part of you going through that journey. But I'd love to hear from your perspective how it's felt from when you started 10 months ago and what that journey's felt like for you.
That's an interesting question, actually, because I think when I first started, I was really just watching my thoughts, and that's all I did. I'd go for a run, I'd sit down sometimes, but I'd think about my thoughts. Hey, what am I thinking right now, and why am I suddenly thinking about something else randomly? And I think one way that I tried to be more mindful of that was actually just watch it. And if I did drift off somewhere else, where did that go? At what point did I suddenly diverge to a different topic, and why? And then I brought myself back to the thoughts. I probably stuck at that really consistently though for the first month, 2 months. And then after that, I started trying to explore how I felt. And I think that was probably the groundbreaking one for me personally. It's led to so many more doors after that. But then from watching how you feel.
Can you explain that? So
Yeah.
you watch your thoughts,
Yeah.
and then when you say you watch how you feel,
I watch my emotions. So then, there might be a day where I'm just feeling normal, right? Like, well, what is normal?
Yeah.
Like, what is it? Am I calm today? Am I feeling really impatient for one? Like, what is it? And why am I feeling like this? And I think from then, what I've been doing is I've been trying to transform my shadows, so my lower frequency states, to something a bit more higher. So I think from doing that, it's led me to open up in that direction.
I think quickly I'll interject. So like to people that don't really know what shadows and everything is, I'll get Shadows to explain it too, because I made it sound like I was about to explain it. I don't know anything. No, I just don't know how to explain it. So just maybe like a bit of context.
Yeah, I mean, I might use. You'll have a lot more to add to this because I feel like this is just your forte. But I feel like if there's a feeling we experience that feels unpleasant to us and we don't enjoy, let's use impatience as one of them, right? So if anyone feels impatient and they want to move on to something that's not yet here, let's call that a shadow because you probably don't enjoy feeling like that, right? Whereas when you tap into that shadow, your ability to even recognize that there's a problem in that means you're going to have a deeper understanding of patience when you get to patience, right? Because you know what it's like to be impatient to such a degree that your appreciation for patience will be greater than someone who hasn't experienced the depth of impatience. So that's probably a very simplistic way.
Yeah, and I think on the notion of impatience, that's something that resonates to me quite a lot.
Oh, does it?
Yeah. So, impatience is definitely something that I never noticed, but I think Shanaka probably picked up over the past couple years as well, that I probably went through and struggled with.
I mean, I can only see the difference. It's like I was saying before we started.
Yeah.
I feel like you're just so much more in tune with the natural flow of life. Whereas before I saw jitteriness or you trying to rush over your words. But there's just like you're just kind of with it now, right?
Yeah. And
so that's how I would describe it.
And I feel like when I really tapped into that impatience, I kind of saw why I was doing that.
Yeah.
I think I was impatient because I wasn't appreciating the moment as it was. Right? I was trying to move on to the next one. I was so hungry for the next thing. And I think in such a fast society that we live in right now, I think it is a common thing that people do experience, and I have been told that quite a few times as well. Because we live in such a fast society and community that we want things now, people are struggling to really appreciate, embrace the actual moment itself.
Yeah.
So, meditation, mindfulness, it brings you back to doing that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think when I realised that I was trying to rush to the next moment, it kind of told me, hey, Ange, why don't you love this moment? Why aren't you living and loving your life as it is? And then when I realised that, I was like, no, that's not right. I love life so much. I'm not, purposely at least, trying to jump to the next moment. I don't dislike life. Why am I doing this? So I guess that made me really pause and think. It kind of made me feel a lot more appreciative of the current moments. I felt so much more patient, and to me, time didn't exist anymore at that point. It was just something that just opened me, and I think honestly it changed me a lot over the past 10, 12 months already.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's so obviously time in the sense of AM, PM, right? So I feel like to a degree that's what everyone sort of perceives as time, right? Like a clock kind of thing. But I feel like more so if you just feel the motion of everything, I've sort of captured that as time. So if you stop thinking about it as 10 o'clock is later on, it's more so just it's later on. Don't link it to it's still future.
Yeah.
I mean, I would just describe it as simply as, at what point does this moment ever end? And if you just ask yourself that question, you'll realize it never ends. So we just create time because we seem to have a memory of something that happened before,
Yeah.
and we seem to think that this is going to be something that comes later.
Yeah.
But in your experience of it, it's just a
Yeah.
flow.
I think it's a linear system that people put in place just to create order.
Yes.
Like, I feel like that's what it is. It's interesting though, because when I got to the feeling of patience, right, I decided then that I'm going to embrace this moment so much, that I love life so much at this moment. I think the shadow that happened after that was I didn't want the next moment to happen then because I love the moment so much, right? Yeah. So I think that was something
That's
else
awesome.
something else that I kind of noticed. Oh, why, Ange? Okay, stop. Why do you feel this way?
Yeah.
And then I think a revelation came at that moment. I realized that in that moment of time that I love life so much. That moment itself, infinitely, was timeless, and I could have lived in that moment, in my mind anyway, forever. Like, yeah, I think it just never would have died. That moment itself never died.
Yeah,
So
that's an awesome insight.
I think honestly, that's just one example of the things I've been going through for the past while already. But yeah, I'm all about just trying to understand concepts, and I feel like I just really enjoy doing that.
Yeah.
I really do.
I feel like it's a really interesting, I'm someone who sort of does, I actually relate to a lot of the things you're talking about. It's strangely, right? Because I feel like the way you're sort of speaking about it, it's so much more interesting. Where when I start talking about it, it's so boring. But it's really exciting, and I think the way you go through it is really interesting. It's similar to Shana's, where it's a very insightful way of talking about these things, which is really interesting.
Yeah, I just feel like she is so inquisitive in her nature, and this is one of the things I've seen as well. It's you used to question things due to your own confusion, and you used to ask, me as an example, questions, right? But I feel like you've gotten to a place now where you question in a way which allows you to come to the answer that suits you. And because you just have that nature in you, you have a way of eloquently bringing something out because you've gone through your own journey in understanding it.
I do find joy in asking questions though. Is that really weird? I love asking questions.
Curiosity.
Yeah. I think there's just so much to wonder about, and even if you know the answer, to share it with someone else is, such a gift as well.
And sometimes you think you know the answer, but you don't really know the answer. So you ask the question and you're oh shit, I thought I knew, but I didn't even know. I have that all the time.
I feel like some of the best questions that you ask to realize it's unanswerable. That's one thing I've come to terms with.
Yeah, and that life is just so paradoxical.
Yeah.
And I think by doing that, asking questions to find the answer, right? I feel like there is no one set answer, right? I think the key thing about asking questions is really just to keep an open mind to everything, because when you keep an open mind, everything's possible, right?
Yeah. It's it only opens when you're open.
Yeah. And spirituality aside, but even when it comes to things like research, when it comes to how we manage back pain, for example, or people's diet, that evidence is always changing. The science is always changing. Yeah. So is there really one fixed truth, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just feel like it's so infinite, and I think that's such a magical thing about life. I'm just really excited about it.
Yeah. No, that's awesome.
Yeah, but I can also see how confusing it can be as well, and trust me, confusion is another thing that I'm very prone to. So people who know me already, I don't get it sometimes. I just don't know sometimes.
Yeah. And
that was something else that I explored recently too.
Do you want to talk us through that if you want to?
Yeah, so that's something that I experienced very recently. I only started contemplating confusion in the past 2-3 weeks. So we had a passing in the family 2 to 3 weeks ago, and I was really emotional at the start. That's what I felt. But my mind was telling me, it's going to be okay because I trust life so much. I have so much faith in it. I think I don't want to mourn because I'm celebrating the fact that, life was had and it was lived so beautifully and lived so fully. So why are you feeling a certain way? And I think what happened was because my emotions were feeling one thing and then my head was saying something else, it wasn't matching up. And that's where the confusion came in. And I think when it comes to death, and I haven't experienced this a lot as well. So it was the first time where I was really hit with pure confusion about how to feel.
I think you mentioned when you were talking about it to me, other people were feeling in different ways, and it made you just wonder, is there a right way to feel?
Yeah. And I came to the conclusion that no, there is not one way to feel. Like, it is so different for everyone.
Yeah.
And I think when you try to match how you feel to other people or check if this is normal or not, I think that's where I think confusion really happens. But I guess leading from that, confusion for me is a point of uncertainty. Like, you don't know how you should be feeling. Is this right or is this wrong? Right? There's nothing fixated. Just like how truth is never fixated, confusion is also never fixated. But instead of being scared of the uncertainty in the future, I guess we were talking about it earlier, but really using that mentality to channel it into something creative. Channel it into a way that you have a choice on how to feel. And I feel like that's true, to me, that's true freedom, because then I can face anything and be okay with it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That resonates heaps for me.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I think something that resonates with me is like, obviously, like when your brother passed away, right? Like, I was like a lot younger than back at that time. So for me, like, I was more of like someone who externally seemed strong, or like as in I want to seem strong at least. So for me, I was more like, of course, like to a degree, like I was like trying to just like sort of hold it in and like not sort of act out or anything like that. But I was like, yeah, like as in I was more like, oh, let's go with the flow, like as in death happens, like trying to accept it, right? But then you get to the reality of like, yeah, it's very, very sad, right? Like as in, and I think there's other people have other ways, right? But for me, it was more like, oh shit, like I'm really fucking sad right now, right? And it's okay to be sad. Like, it's very okay to be sad at the moment. And even to show your sadness is something that's, I think that's a different conversation. But
it's vulnerability, and I think it's acceptance of any emotion that you have.
100%. And I think it's really scary at times, right? Like where you're not used to it sometimes, and there's societies around, like especially like during that time there were so many people around, right? So you're really scared of being judged or like being in the uncomfortable.
Yeah, now that I bring myself back to it, I feel like being faced with death is honestly one of the most confusing things I've ever been faced with, because you're trying to like figure out your own shit and how you feel, and you're like, it's like exactly what you're saying, your emotions and your mind are like at conflict almost all the time. And then there is this external thing as well, because I remember going through my whole thing of how do I want to appear so that I don't hurt my parents and my family. It's like, do I want to be vulnerable so they can see that in me? Do I want to be strong so they can see that in me? So I actually couldn't figure it out. And I just went through like a fucking massive roller coaster. And then now it's like way later, you kind of realize whatever you feel is cool.
Exactly.
And you just have to like be okay with that.
There's no right or wrong.
Yeah, definitely. And I think something that it's taught me also is every single emotion should be embraced. We spoke about this early already, but my analogy to feeling emotions was like color. So let's say sadness is, don't laugh at me.
No, I'm laughing because I'm getting where you're going with it.
Yeah, because how the way that I imagined it was, let's say like sadness is like blue and anger is like deep red and happiness is like yellow and everything. But let's say like your whole life is a canvas, it's completely white, right? It would be so boring if we were just happy all day, right? It would be so boring. Like it'll be fun, it'll be easy. But by the end of your lifetime, you want to know that you were able to experience everything and do it fearlessly as well. Because I think fear is really what the really scary thing is. And I think that's what stops people from really truly feeling every emotion.
I mean, even fear is probably one of the colors that you will include on your canvas that creates a story for all of them, right? So it's like even fear is fine.
Yeah, and I think fear should be embraced as well. But the thing is, when you go through it, you know it, but to do it is such a different story.
Yeah.
I think.
I resonate with that like a lot because like I feel like almost like everyone's like aiming to be happy. Like why, right? As in like it's like it might be like when you feel the best, right? But like and then there are people that I've seen that like, and this is what made me like sort of start thinking about it as well, right? That are really sad, but they like don't care about it.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm like, why don't they care? Like as in like they seem like happier than I do almost, even though like I'm happy, right? And then they just it's like you just embrace every emotion because you can't be in like happy all the time, right?
Yeah, so I guess one thing that I want to talk about today as well was how to actually overcome it. Because I think people know that, fear is an obstacle. It can be if you're scared of it. If you embrace it, that's okay, I guess. There's no problem for you then. But for someone who does, it is easier said than done. But for someone who's going through it, you know it, but how are you going to actually go through it? And I think it's a scary step into because when you're in fear, like you're fearing the worst outcome out of all of it, right? That's where anxiety comes in. You're just scared of the uncertainty, scared of what's going on next.
Yeah, it's like I think everyone knows that, I can't remember where I heard this quote, but every single person is fully aware that disaster can strike at any moment. And everyone has a worst case disaster in the back of their mind that if they allow too much, it's terrifying, right? So it's just what your statement reminded me of.
Yeah, it's a good statement, yeah. I can share like a couple ways that I try to overcome fear itself. I think one, this comes with practice though, but really being present in the moment because when you're right here not worrying about the future, I think it's a way that you can ease yourself through it. That's just what's worked for me sometimes. But also from the past few weeks and months where I did sense fear, I think an analogy you actually taught me for this one, Chance, was trying to imagine you're treating like your fear like a child. And I feel like that really stuck out to me a lot, and it's actually stuck out to me ever since we talked about it a few months ago.
Yeah.
Like, how would you treat yourself, and how would you treat a crying child or a scared child? I think because you should treat that child how you treat yourself.
Yeah. I remember, there's like an interesting story I can share on that. There was a time, probably about a year and a half ago, where I was just getting random moments of like terror. And I remember I was at work specifically, and I would stay back till like 9 p.m. and everyone had gone home, and this is like right in the middle of the city. And I would come out of my office having finished my work, and I'd be like, I feel like I'm about to get murdered right now, right? Like all the lights are off, and I'm just like, okay. I kept getting this, right? And it got more and more intense. And one day I was just like, I can't just like keep going through this and not trying to like work through it. So one day it was just like literally there was someone hiding in one of the corners with like a pistol or a knife, and they were going to come running at me. That's how it felt, right? Yeah. And I was like, okay. I walked right into the middle of the room and I sat down. In my mind, I was like, I am not getting up until I've just gotten to the bottom of whatever this is, right? So I was like, I don't know what it is. I just know for some reason there's like terror. And I sat down, I think I sat there for like 2 hours, and I just kept like being okay with that feeling being there, kept being okay with it. And eventually like the image that came to my mind, however you want to interpret it, is there was like a crazy lady there, think of it like that, right? And she was like screaming at me, running at me. And I was just like, that's cool, you can be like that. And the more I sat with it, I saw that what I initially took as me being afraid of her hurting me was her being afraid. And the more I sat with it, the more I started to see her mold herself into a little scared child who was just scared for her life.
Yeah.
Right? And I was like, oh, that's okay. Why would I hate you? Yeah, it was just like a child who was so terrified that they didn't know any better than to hurt someone else, right? I was like, oh, okay. if you sit with it for long enough,
Yeah.
you sort of realize what fear is.
Yeah.
And there's like an incredible purity and innocence in fear if you can be with it for long enough. And you just realize, I never want to hurt fear ever again. All I want to do is hug it, literally.
I love that story.
Great story.
It is a great story.
And that's where the analogy came from. It was like my own experience of it.
It does take a lot of courage, though, to do it. And I think that's why it's hard to accept, because we need to know, we need to trust that things will be okay.
I think that's what I was going to touch on as well. Like, for me, like, I think I love that. Like, but for me, it's like different, right? Like, I think for me, like, how I get over my own fear is that, for example, say I was like, it was like dark, right? And there's obviously a crazy lady running at me. Like, obviously, there's a possibility that can happen, right? But like, what does me being scared change, right? Like, as in, if there is a person there that's gonna kill me, okay, that's gonna happen, right? Like fair enough. Like, what can I do about that, right?
Yeah.
So it's a bit like sad in a sense where like you're like, oh, like whatever happens is gonna happen. But at the end of the day, right? Like for me, it's like I can live my life scared and being like, okay, this might happen, this might happen, this might happen. It could, right? But at the same time, I can just accept that if it happens, it will, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. And I think I just like the way I live my life now is more so. And don't get me wrong, that fear does come into my mind, right? And then I'm like, okay, calm down, and then really be like, okay, if that's gonna happen, it will happen. If there's like things I can do to like maybe get away from it or something, obviously I'll do it. But yeah, I think really accepting it and being, as you said, present in that helps a lot.
I think it's knowing that emotionally you can handle it.
Yeah.
Because I think, and I'm guilty. I used to be really guilty of this as well, but I used to use my mind to get me out of feeling things. I'd convince myself, hey, I don't need to feel like this because of X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
So I really use my mind to escape. But I think when I was able to just face it up front, I knew for good that I was actually able to handle any emotion that just came my way. And I think,
that's awesome.
I think when you really can feel any emotion, whether it's the worst terror on this planet or like love is so painful that it actually like stabs you, like anything, I think that's, to me, that's being free. And I think that's what fear gives you. Like, it is a sense of freedom. And to me, that is. And I think for everyone, it is different. But
Yeah, no, I think
you
it's
have to
the
face
same for me
anything.
as well. Yeah, I think it's the same for me.
I
as
think
well.
freedom is, it's,
think it's one of
I
the
think you
things,
captured it.
Yeah.
I think people may describe it from different perspectives, but I agree with your assessment
because
of it.
like fear is in every emotion, like anger. Like when people hold grudges, for example, they're holding on to like an anger that they can't get rid of because they're scared of the anger. Or they might be scared the anger's going to get worse and control them, right? But you kind of learn also that with all these shadow patterns and anger and fear and everything, that you shouldn't really fight fear with fear, and you shouldn't demonize it either, or even try to control it. And I feel like the point of mindfulness training or meditation is not to control your emotions still. I really honestly think it's to be in harmony with your emotions, because, you know, if fear was, you know, like an innocent child, like you were saying before, like, why would you hate it, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I think something
Why
I really like
should
that you said
reject it?
there is that, you know, fear exists in like anger as well, right? I think a lot of people think that you're going through like one emotion at a time, like happiness, anger, sadness, because that's what you might primarily feel. But I think everything is there at the same time in its own flow, but there's only one that's prevalent, right? Or like one that's you can see or feel. But I think in everything there is the existence of another.
I think it's interesting because I think people use their mind again to identify what the emotion is. But when you sit with it and don't put any labels on it, it's a mixture of everything and the good as well, right?
Yeah, I agree.
I agree completely.
I like what you said about being in harmony with it. It's like the analogy I use for myself with fear, any emotion, and even your ego is, I used to think that the goal is to get rid of your ego or to like overpower your ego. But now I think of it as like, if I'm driving a car, I definitely don't want my ego driving my car. right? So it's like, that's going to take me somewhere I don't want to go. So I'm not going to give it the license to drive, but I'm also not going to throw it out the window. And I'm also not going to make myself better than it, because that's, again, the ego's way of getting into the driver's seat. So I'm not going to put it behind me, but I'm going to put it next to me in the passenger seat. And we will go on our road trip conversing as equals, and it will give me advice I'm sure I wouldn't have thought of, because it cares more about me than I care about myself sometimes. So it's like you work with it, and you can replace ego with like anything, right? You can call it fear if you want. You put the fear not in the driver's seat, but in the passenger seat. And as you go on your journey, you learn to work with it, and it learns to work with you, and it's integrated and embodied, and then you're all good.
And you realize that the fear was or whatever it is only telling you all this thing because it cares about you, right? And I think from then you can transform any shadow pattern into love. I think by the end of it, you'll only feel confused or impatient or anything because of a lack of love, right? But then it kind of brings out that at the same time. Like it's so paradoxical, but I think you can't have one without the other.
100%. Yeah, I'm loving the analogies that are coming out. Did you have that planned? Or?
No, it's just like I always like try to create stories for me to understand it myself.
That's incredible. That's a talent in itself. But yeah, sorry. But yeah, no, I like 100% agree. And I think, when you're talking about all these emotions, like it's like very like you're always facing them, right? Like in everything you do. So like it's very important that, like, as in to different people it's different importance, but I think for me especially, I hold it really as like a really high importance that I'm one with my feelings, and that if, like, as you said, like if I'm sad, I need to understand that that's fine, it's just sadness, and then have the opposite as well.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Anything interesting that you've been besides that you're thinking about?
Well, I've gone through a lot of things, and I feel like as a whole, meditation for me has brought that out in me, just because that's been my focus for the time being. But I also want to say that that's not all that it encapsulates, right? Everyone has different reasons for meditating, for example. Like you don't even have to, but like
maybe like,
for me,
and that's this if you want as well, right? Like why did you sort of start meditating? Maybe like
honestly, like I was just curious. Like I had no reason to do it. Like at that time, I was happy with my life. I had nothing wrong with me. I was just curious. Hey, I'm gonna give this a go. And I think ever since I was young, I always had deep thoughts about my existence. And I think I was just curious to learn about more. Honestly, when I started off, it wasn't what I'm doing now. Like I didn't meditate. Oh, okay, I got to hunt my shadows and stuff. Like not like that. But I really just want to have an understanding of it altogether. I think along the way, it has taught me a lot, though. It has taught me to really appreciate life, and I think from doing that, I can see how beautiful everything really is.
Yeah. I love how you don't define meditation as one thing as well. It's like something for me I've learned is the moment you make something, you also restrict it by its definition. It's like if you call meditation breath work, then suddenly it's not something you can do when you're going for a run, right? Or like it's not something we can be doing right now. Whereas if you just say, look, meditation is meditation, full stop. Meditation equals meditation. Then all of a sudden you can literally be meditating 24/7 because you haven't defined what it is.
100%, definitely.
And it's like not annoys me. It's like I hear people trying to define something like love. It's like, why can't love just be love? It's like the moment you say love equals happiness, then if you're not happy, you're not experiencing love. But if you can just leave things as they are, then you can experience whatever, whenever.
Yeah, I really don't think it has to be as structured as it is as well, because I feel like everyone wants to create order, right? But you're then trying to control everything.
Yeah, exactly.
If you just let it be, it just is what it is, and that's okay, like no matter what it is. And I think when I started learning how to meditate altogether, I was reading books. I was like, oh, what's that? I was so confused. I was like, what is that? Like, I'm trying, but it's not working. Like, nothing's happening. But that was because I didn't understand what it was. And I was, I guess, bound by what I thought the definition of it was.
Yeah.
Even when it comes to religion, for example, you get taught that it's a certain way,
Yeah.
right? But why is it a certain way? Is it to bring out patterns in you? Is it to create peace? Is it to create appreciation? Or is it to, or are you doing it for a belief that it's going to get you somewhere else, right? I feel like, I don't know, personally, I like to question a lot of things.
It's good to question.
So,
I think questioning is like a great like tool.
Yeah.
I think it's so cool. Sorry, just to quickly sort of jump onto what you were saying there. I think like something I love that you brought up was that everyone will have their own way of sort of like meditating, and like if even if it's like meditating or like the practice of what you want to do, right? I think people define it specifically, and like there's like specific YouTube videos or books that would instruct you on how to do it, and then you'll be like, okay, fuck, like this doesn't work,
yeah.
and then you stop, right? And I'm only sort of saying this because like a lot of the people that watch, it's something that comes up a lot. So a lot of people ask, right? A lot of people are curious. So
it is
like,
definitely a repeating theme for sure.
Yeah.
And I've definitely noticed that as well. And I was actually felt bad because I was like, Kavien, everyone's kind of talked about what I want to talk about already. Right? What do I do?
No, I love
but
it
I
because
think,
you've got your own take on it.
Yeah.
yeah, but it's interesting because I do have my own opinions on certain things as well.
Yeah.
Open for debate as well. I'm very open for it. So for anyone who's listening, I welcome everyone to question me as well. And because I don't think I have all the answers, and I don't think anyone will ever have one set answer ever.
Yeah.
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 No, definitely. I think that everything we've sort of been saying as well is very open, right? So,
Yeah.
and like I think, yeah, as you mentioned, like everyone's got their own way of doing things. So, yeah.
I think another way, like another reason why people do this is because they try to find their purpose in life. I think after I experienced death a few weeks ago, I was talking to some, and I guess a couple of people questioning life, and I think they started getting to spirituality because of that. Like, what is the point of life, right? What's the purpose? I think through meditation, I found my own purpose through it. But, you know, everyone will have their own version of it, or everyone will have something that resonates to them a lot more.
Yeah. 100%. And I think it's a great point because I think if we're talking specifically meditation, people almost use it in like different ways. And I think one of like, not the wrong ways, I don't think it's like never a wrong way, but one of the ways that I see that don't work or people don't continue doing it is they're using it as an escape, right? To sort of think that like they're going somewhere else that's not their life.
Exactly.
But yeah, and I think it's better used as like a tool almost, in my opinion.
100%, because this life is the only thing that's ever real. Your next life or your whatever life or your life tomorrow has not existed yet.
Yeah.
All right? Like your life is right
it'll never
now.
exist, right? It's only ever going to be this life.
Yeah, only be just this now. So make this what you want it to be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So like I think to like a point as well is like everyone's like, oh, like I don't want money, I don't want this, like I'd rather be like a happy person, meditate every day, all of this, right? But like that's cool, like that's fine, you can do that. But I think if you want to make money, if you want to do all these things, go for it. Like this is like life, right? So as much as we're emphasizing meditation and all these like tools to do like deeper work, I don't think to a degree obviously like matters for yourself, but like if you don't do it or if you do it, doesn't make you like a better or
It doesn't make a difference at all. No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
You could go your whole life like the most peaceful person on earth. They have no idea what meditation is altogether.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's something that's for everyone. Like, if you want to, do it. But if not, that's okay as well. But it's not going to, like, lead you to someplace else that you know that you're going to escape to because this life isn't cutting enough for you.
Exactly.
I think you raise a good point there with escapism. I think, and I think a lot of people do side because some hardship comes on as well, and I feel like it is a form of escape.
Yeah.
But
I think like when I say it's like very loose. Yeah. It's
loosely
like,
that is.
It's like like it might help you. Like it definitely can help you. It's just like you have to be a bit like cautious when you get into it.
Cautious when you get into what?
So like into the thought of like it's an escape. Like as in like you need to be careful because like I think when people use it as a bit of an escape, right? I think it's definitely a tool that can help you.
Yeah.
Are you talking about meditation?
Meditation, yeah. But like you just need to be cautious that like it might not be like rainbows and
Yeah, and I think honestly, like I think you're definitely on the ball with that one, because I think when hardship comes on, people do it then hoping that there will be rainbows on the other side. But to get to the rainbow, you have to go through the swamps first, right? Right?
Yeah.
Like you have to face it to get there.
Yeah.
It's not going to come easily. It's not going to come magically. I think it's going to come with consistency and patience and kindness to yourself. And know that's not a race. No, there's no right way to do it. Just keep an open mind and just be a good person. Yeah.
Be good, do good, have faith.
Yeah, like I think it's so simple, and I think people like to complicate a lot of things, but life is really so simple. Well, it can be. It can be whatever you want. It can be whatever you want, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
I think people like making it like difficult for themselves just so they have something to do.
Yeah, and I think when people think of purpose, right, they think they have to do something, but it's really not. Right? You don't have to do anything at all, and that can be purposeful as well.
Yeah.
I love how like you mentioned it before, right? On every podcast we have like similar topics,
Yeah.
but the way we get to it is like completely different on every time.
Yeah.
It's like so much like it's so interesting for me because I learn a lot like when I'm sitting here, right? I think people might think that I know a lot, do a lot, right? But I'm like an empty canvas almost, right? Or blank canvas, whatever you call it. But like even from just listening to these guys, like I learned so much for myself, and I think you've touched on things that I actually wouldn't have said myself, or even with the fear, right? Like I wouldn't have thought that myself, but like the way you guys explain it, I'm like, oh shit, like that's cool.
I think different ways like resonate with different people because people have different perspectives on things.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like if we walk into this room and we look at this can of Pepsi, we'll all look at it from different angles and we're looking at the same thing, but I might talk about how there's no sugar and you might talk about how colourful it is and you might talk about how tasty you know it to be. But yeah, it's like you can talk about the same thing, but there's so much to learn from the different ways people are observing it and engaging with it. And that's why it's like it's endless, right? Like you can have 1,000 different conversations about purpose and fear and meditation and life. And to be honest, like every single one of them will be awesome and interesting and unique. And that's what makes it cool. It's like endless possibility.
And I guess the more we talk about it as well, it could resonate to different people because I think it's one to know it, but like what are we going to do about it, right?
Yeah.
And I think and I might have mentioned this already, but I don't want people just to know this stuff. I want people to actually take it on themselves to change something. So it's one to know it, but when you actually come across fear, how are you going to actually do it, right?
Yeah. What would you suggest?
Well, I think one, it takes courage, but also just trusting. And that's a big ask, by the way. It's a big ask to trust when you're scared as hell, right?
What's courage for you?
Well, courage for me is knowing that you can step into anything and you'll still be okay.
Yeah.
Like you're pretty much invincible because nothing can defeat you. You have it in you and you've always had it in you and it's just waiting to be uncovered. I think your truest you will shine the most through courage.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
It's a great way of describing it.
I think like a big thing there as well is, right, like a lot of the time like we're sort of facing our own problem, but if you look at the person next to you, they're probably all you imagine the person next to you going through the same thing and like they've conquered it, right? Like, and there's a lot of things that a lot of people have done that we're sort of going through. Like what's different between me and them, right? Like if they can get through it for themselves, why can't I get through it? Obviously, like if you don't have an arm when you're rock climbing, it's different, right? Like that's a different conversation. But I guess this is like a bit of a different perspective maybe from me. But like for me, something that comforts me is that when I see that other people are able to do it and are capable of doing it, I'm like, why can't I?
Yeah.
And that really questions me and takes me to like
100%. So I guess I think it's like a lot of great ideas so far for sure. I think the first time I felt fear a lot was actually I can't remember, but I remember talking to you about it a few months ago, right? And I think what I did was I imagined fear to be a separate thing. Okay, it wasn't me. it's this bubble, it's this fear of something else. And all I had to do was just look at it.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not me, it's just there. And then when I watched it and just looked at it, it wasn't attacking me, it was just there. Your fear is really just there. And you're just going to be okay with it.
So it's like just creating a little bit
Yeah.
of distance between you and whatever it is you're experiencing.
Yeah, because you don't want to swim in it, right? You just want to know that it's there and be okay with it being there.
Yeah.
Fear's almost
Yeah.
there to like help you, right? Like as much as like it seems like a scary thing and people don't want to feel fear almost, right? I feel like fear is there to help you through specific things because in certain like circumstances you need to feel fear. You need to feel like all the emotions.
I think you can do it both ways. I think you can engage with it. You can also just let it be there.
Yeah.
I think you can also try to run away from it. And everyone will try that.
Yeah.
It's just that will inevitably just bring you back to the place you were at.
Yeah.
But you can do it both ways, I think. It's like you can engage with it and you can also just be
There's so many
comfortable
ways.
with it being there.
Yeah.
And eventually, if you think of it as a separate thing, I think it just kind of loses its interest in you because you are not that interested in it.
I think there's ways to go around it. You can detach yourself to make it easy at the start, but then you still have to go through it.
Yeah.
You still have to by the end of it. But yeah, that was just one example, I think, fear where it is so recurring in a lot of patterns so far. I did come across one where I didn't feel fear in it, but instead there was a lack of like love instead. So I think, for example, exhaustion, I felt that big time, like a month or 2 months ago. It wasn't because I was scared of the exhaustion though, right? Or what's
I
your take
remember
on it? Yeah, I went through that.
So just elaborate a little bit.
So this is just another example where I didn't have to face fear to go through it, but I had to understand it from a different way.
Yeah.
So I was really exhausted at work,
Yeah.
right? And I didn't know why I was feeling like that because my caseload was exactly the same. But I was feeling really tired, really, really exhausted. And I was like, why am I feeling like this? I'm not scared of it. Like, just bring it on, I can do more. All right? But I was so tired. I was like, why is it still there?
Yeah.
And I think what I did for this one, similar to how we spoke with you before, I looked at exhaustion as a different entity.
Yeah.
Like, and it was only telling me that I'm exhausted because it wanted me to take a break, right? It wanted me to be kinder to myself. It told me to
Yeah.
show myself that I need to love myself and prioritize myself more instead of my caseload at work. I guess that's an example where I didn't have to face fear, but I approached it in a similar way.
Yeah.
Like, I think the way that I did it was I imagined exhaustion like my parents, right? They're telling you to do something. I don't like being told what to do. I really don't like it. I remember one time telling my parents, hey, don't tell me what to do because I actually don't think I will do it. To give them a heads up because I wanted to do the right thing, but I just couldn't because they're telling me what to do. It's similar to that. Exhaustion was, I guess, telling me, like, it was telling me that I need to take a rest and I don't think I want to listen to it. So that's why I kept feeling it. But I think when I listened to it, okay, I can see where you're coming from. You're just telling me this because you're caring for me. You're only telling me what to do out of love. I think when I realized that, I became more peaceful. I became at ease with it. And I think from then I knew what to do. I knew to give myself a bit more self-care. I told myself to do the things I love. Don't focus on the seriousness of life too much and don't worry about other people's expectations. It's just that.
Yeah.
Because that's another example where fear isn't in everything, but you can approach fear just like how you approach exhaustion, just like how you face your own problems, no matter what they are, big or small.
That's a great story.
How long has it been, Louis?
40 minutes, 50 minutes.
Right, we'll go a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's been really quick though.
Yeah, that was really fast.
What, it's 50 minutes?
That's
No
crazy.
way, no way.
Awesome.
That's actually
It's
crazy.
been really deep. I think maybe like for the last 10 minutes, I think like something
Yeah.
that I've been doing at the end of like most of the episodes now is taking away something that people can take away from it in terms of like maybe
okay.
like an activity in your own way, so like a weekly task. Or...
I think my advice would just be in harmony with your feelings. I think don't try to fight the fear with your fears. And I think a takeaway could be just watching how you feel, but not try to escape it. Like if you're feeling sad, don't try to neglect it and do something else to give you temporary happiness. Just be okay sitting in it without drowning in it.
Yeah.
So almost like you want just people to be more aware of their feelings and emotions?
Be aware of it, but also know your boundaries as well, right? You might be able to word it better for me.
Can you expand on that a little bit, just so I have
like,
clarity?
If you're feeling a certain way, don't be scared of feeling it, but don't swim into the story of it, right?
Yeah.
So if you're feeling things a certain way, detach yourself from the story, just look at your emotions itself and look at just that. Because when you look at it and simplify it down, it becomes so much easier.
Yeah, that's a really good one. The way I'm understanding that is there's feelings and then there's the story we create through our mind about how that's come about, what that means, and that's where I think a lot of the issues can arise. Whereas it's like the feeling itself is fine.
Yeah.
And you can learn to have feelings without stories. Is that what you're trying to say?
Exactly, because I think the story is really just in the mind, and the mind's there to protect you.
Yeah.
Like survival-wise, right? It's trying to warn you, hey, don't go down that path. But I think if you have the courage in yourself to know that you can do it, despite that, you'll always be okay, no matter what you face.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I'd sort of add to that is you can have a feeling and you detach if it's unpleasant. Even if it's pleasant, you don't need to make up a story about it. That's like something that I think for me came a bit later, but is equally important. So you can create negative stories about feelings, you can create positive stories about feelings, or you can just say, oh, that's a feeling that I have, full stop. Yeah.
I think that's a great exercise. I think it's something that you don't need to necessarily sit down and meditate for, right?
You don't have to,
How
no.
can people do it?
How do you
That's
do
a
it?
good question. Well, how do I do what again?
So it's sort of like so obviously like correct me if I'm wrong,
Yeah.
right? So like from what I can understand, it's more to like sort of embrace your
Embrace it,
emotions
yeah.
and really feel it for what it is, right?
Yeah.
I guess like the way I would probably do that, right? So say I get angry at something, like maybe for me, right? Usually I'll go through the whole cycle, like, oh, damn, my mum told me to do this. Hate my mum. Like,
Your mum better not be watching this, yeah? Is she?
Not this deep in. But yeah, I guess it's like I'll get angry, yell, all of that, right? So for me, usually how I would sort of embrace it is like, damn, like why did I feel like that, right? Like, almost detached from that story of that and be like, okay, what was the emotion then? How can I?
I think as long as the outlet is healthy, you know, some people might want to journal, you might want to listen to music, you might just want to sit there and just do nothing. I don't know. Because, for example, if you do sit there with nothing, right? Like if you think about your deepest, darkest feeling, right? Just sit in it right now. Like feel that density, right? If you just sit with this density right now with no story attached, compare it now to the feelings that you would feel when you have deep love, right? When you feel something so passionate, so kindly and so lovingly, it almost feels the same as you know, your darkest, deepest fear or worry or anxiety or dread. That dread feeling feels almost the same.
I would say
Just without the
feels,
story.
it does feel the same once you remove the story.
Once
It's
you
like,
remove the story, it's
if you
the same.
touch a cube of ice and a flame with your eyes closed, you won't know the difference.
Exactly, yeah.
So you can't tell the difference between freezing and burning until you've got your eyes open and you create a story about the fact that there's an ice cube here and a flame there.
Exactly. Some people get
which
ice
is
burns,
insane, right?
remember? People get
Yeah.
ice burns because it feels exactly the same.
Yeah.
So
Try
I'll
it.
be able to tell.
Maybe you can try that, Kavien.
Yeah, I think I'll be able to tell that. No, I get what you're getting.
If it's hot enough
Yeah.
and if it's cold
Yeah,
enough,
just
you
the
can't tell.
extremities.
No, I get
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
It's fun to think.
Yeah.
I'll probably do it. Test it.
No, you can do it. If it's not for long enough, it's not going to hurt you. And it's a great exercise for you to see that our experience is like almost entirely created in our mind. And we're so involved in our mind that we almost never experience reality, right? And it's like the more you can learn to see what the difference is, the more you can learn to engage with reality and not your own mind.
Definitely. And I think another point is don't be so detached from it, because life is about feeling everything you need to feel. I think people might want to detach to escape, but be okay in feeling it, because once you do, you know then you've lived life fully as the most full human that you can possibly be, right?
Yeah,
Like,
definitely.
and how much more free is that feeling than knowing that you can do anything and nothing's ever going to hurt you.
Yeah.
And knowing that's never going to do it. Right? Because it's always been your choice to feel a certain way.
It's a great note to end on. That is the banger. Yeah, too easy. Thank you all so much for watching. It's been really deep and contemplative. I think it's might be one of like the deepest ones in terms of like.
You killed it. Eh?
Yeah, you killed it. The time just flew. So really glad that Angela joined. I think she'll probably come again. She's got so much to talk about. If she's
I
willing
could
to
go
come.
for days.
She can actually go for days.
For days. But I won't. I'll spare you guys.
No, definitely. It's so good. I think like people really enjoy like following that conversation. Like I'm gonna watch it back and enjoy it myself. So thank you so much. Everyone's stuff will be down in the description. Like and subscribe if you haven't already. And thank you guys.
Thanks, Kavien.